Welcome back. Now, your job is a place you spend the majority of your time, and more often than not can be the source of your stress or a place where your mental health is tested. Tonight, as we continue with the Mental Health Talk series, we look at the contributing factors at work, navigating your office while dealing with a mental disorder, and how employers can create safe spaces to have open and honest discussions on mental health. Joining me in studio, we have Mwikali Muthiani, to my closest right, a director and lead consultant at Millennial HR, and Patrick Obel, a counseling psychologist at USIU Africa, as well as our extended panel. We have Jackie Kea, who is a counseling psychologist as well and life coach, and will be speaking to us as well. Thank you so much for coming in. But before we begin, I actually had the opportunity to speak to a gentleman known as Cornell Ngare. He is a former journalist, a media practitioner, a PR consultant who had a very interesting experience when it came to mental health and the workplace, and actually found out he was depressed while at work. Take a look at this.
There's a time I just couldn't get up in the morning, and some people might call it Monday blues, but what I realized was with Monday blues, sometimes the fear of going to bed hungry and not paying rent overcomes the fear of going to work, and you just push yourself and go. But I got to a point where I couldn't go, and I couldn't even make up excuses. I couldn't call in sick because I didn't know what was up. I just didn't feel like getting out of bed. I didn't feel like going to work, doing anything, and even eating. So, because some people, you can feel like you don't want to go to work, but you are very, very willing to do other things, to hang out with friends. So for me, it came as everything. And at that time, I missed work for a couple of days, and then I pushed myself and went. My boss asked me where I was. I don't remember what I said. I think I just said I was at home, but I didn't pay much mind to it. And then it happened again for a very extended period of time. And I realized I better get ahead of this thing. I don't know what it is, but I might, as long as I'm communicating, I'm better off than not. So what I did is I went to the HR manager, and I just told I'm not able to work, and I don't know why. So at first she thought I'm coming to resign, I've gotten a better opportunity, and I'm like, no, I don't feel like doing anything.
Very interesting insights that come out of Cornell sharing his experience. And Patrick, let me begin with you, because just looking at the psychological aspect of it all, and him saying it wasn't just Monday blues.
Correct.
It was going beyond not feeling like I wanted to work. I didn't care if I didn't make a salary to pay my rent or even eat. So when someone is feeling that way, and you know, for anyone who could be feeling, how do I differentiate between a bad day and depression?
Now, for one to be in depression, there is an extended period of time. You see, just a bad day, it could just be a day. But when it's something that is extended over a period of time, then it can't just be a bad day. There must be something else. And so for clinical depression to be diagnosed, there has to be an extended period of time. Yes.
So, of course, when he went for the mental health checkup is when he realized, okay, I probably even need to go for medication as well.
Exactly.
But Mwikali, one very interesting thing that he did was he could have held it to himself and not shared it with the employer, but he said, to get ahead of it and to deal with whatever this problem is, I need to tell someone. Most people don't have the courage to do that for fear of being seen as weak. And feeling I may lose my job if I do reveal this issue. But what do you make of his decision to go to the HR department and reveal that this is what he was dealing with?
I think that was a very brave decision. As you say, sometimes many people fear to state issues like this because of the stigma that they would receive. They imagine they would be out on the firing line. Even sometimes when you interview people, they know they may have a problem, but they will never disclose during an interview because already they feel judged. So I think it was really brave to go and speak to somebody, and of course he got the attention that he really wanted, you know. And somebody should also have been concerned the fact that he hadn't been at work for some time. A good line manager would want to understand where's so-and-so, where are they at work, are they okay? Especially, as he says, he had been missing work for some time.
Right.
But I'm also quite impressed that he came, and the person he spoke to, not even the HR person, impressed him and said, where have you been, you know? And so I don't think all workplaces are like that.
That's the thing, and that's a reality, unfortunately, Jackie's. You will not have someone in HR or even a boss saying, take some time out, go get tested, or if you need time to think through things. That doesn't happen. And oftentimes you wonder, is it because the structures are not there, or even socially, we don't have that empathy to worry about our neighbor or our employer or employee in terms of their mental health?
I think it's because maybe also the structures are not there, but I think the management needs to be made aware about also mental health.
Yeah.
Not everybody in the management knows what to do about mental health. So I think the best way also to improve mental health in workplaces, we need to teach the senior management how to support the other employees, look at the signs, and how will they be of help, how will they empathize, how will they handle them. So I think also the management needs training, more training on mental health awareness. Yes.
So you really have to condition people to think differently and behave differently,
yes.
Especially when it comes to someone dealing with a mental disorder. But I'm just curious to our mini audience, would you be brave enough to reveal that to your employer and say, I have a problem? And have you ever done that?
Well, for me, recently, I was working at a place, and I woke up one day, for about 4 weeks, I didn't feel like I wanted to do anything. It's crazy because it sounds like, are you lazy? But it's not that. You just literally feel that you're not able to get out of bed or do anything at all. And for 4 weeks, I would postpone saying it because I'm like, no, you need to push yourself, you need to do this. Right. But one day I couldn't anymore. So I woke up, went to one of my bosses and said, I can't. I need just time. I know I've come today, but I don't even think I can last today. So can I just take a leave, give me a week? If I feel better after that week, then I'll come back. But I literally just need a week. And for me, I think I was one of the I was in a good place. So my boss was understanding, and they were able to, they said, okay, yeah, just go. In fact, nilifukuzwa. So yes, sometimes that happens.
And was that the general experience? I mean, have you worked anywhere else and probably revealed the same information? Was it the same reaction or something different?
I think in the places before, I didn't explain it when it happened. I would just leave, and then you realize the first week you give sick leave because you don't know how to explain. So you're like, I'm not feeling well, so you're just at home that week. Then you realize the next week you still can't, and you realize you can't keep on doing this to your employer, so I'll just quit. So that's what had been happening in the previous workplaces, because I myself didn't know how to explain or articulate that to our boss and have them understand.
I mean, and Patrick, I have to bring this to you because someone is watching and they're thinking, I've gone through exactly what she is explaining, or even what Cornell is explaining, but I have no idea how to even begin to start that conversation with my employer, for fear, of course, of being fired. But how do you have to be very strategic and tactical in how you start that discussion. But how do you do it? Because you do need help.
No, maybe where I would begin is we cannot do a self-diagnosis. That's the other thing.
Yeah.
So first of all, you need to be exposed to a professional that can diagnose you, so that you can now be able to give a language and give some vocabulary to what you are saying. So just because you're not feeling well or you're feeling tired or something, that in itself is not sufficient. Because again, for one to be diagnosed to have a problem of any nature, there is a series of things that are being looked at. So there may be, do you have appetite or those kind of things? What are you feeling about your strength? Are you having energy to do things you need to do? What interests are you having? Have you lost interest? So there is a variety of things, especially for depression, that one has to look for. So before somebody goes to the employer and packages that, they need first to have been diagnosed by a professional, because then they have something they can say. Because even under normal circumstances, for physical health, you can't just wake up and say, oh, I'm sick of kidney failure. how did you get to know that? You know, somebody must have diagnosed that the problem you're having is a kidney problem and it needs this kind of treatment. So even for mental health, if somebody has been diagnosed by a professional that knows what it is, then it becomes easier. And that is why, as you were saying earlier, the senior management can easily accept that you have a broken limb and you can stay home for 1 week, 3 weeks until it recovers.
Right.
But if the mental health is something not tangible, they can't quite see and feel, so it is difficult to know that you are not okay. Right. So that is where the problem, I mean, is. So for one to be able to tell that, they need to have been diagnosed by somebody who knows what they are diagnosing. So an individual can't just wake up and come and say, oh, you know, I'm suffering from anxiety disorder, or I'm suffering from whatever nature of illness, by yourself.
And I guess that's what makes it so difficult. It's an invisible ailment, which no one sees. And speaking of which, because I also spoke to Cornell about that, and he now was in a different job and went through a very, very low point. Take a look at what he said about that experience.
I remember several times I would come to work and I would enter the parking lot, go into my parking space, and then I start thinking about all these guys who are going to come to my desk with requests, and they don't care about like how I've planned my day, they don't care about interruption. That would make me really anxious. I used to have a lot of problem with that. So I would think about that and I would just not leave the car. And maybe I go to work at around 6:30, 7. I would not leave the car, I would not go upstairs, and I would sit in the car. At some point I would go to the back seat of the car and lie in a fetal position because I'm scared of going upstairs. It's not because I have a deadline, it's not because I have a disciplinary issue waiting, or I'm afraid of facing my boss. I'm just afraid to go sit on my desk and say hi to people.
Very interesting. I mean, you go to work, you're there physically, but you don't even step foot into the office. And of course, he's exhibiting anxiety in that scenario because he doesn't want to interact with anyone. But Mwikali, if you are dealing with someone, for instance, like him, and you're an HR professional or boss, then how would you begin to interact with this person and engage them? Because they're good at their job. You hired them for a reason. It's just they're going through something that they really can't control.
Yeah. I think one of the things to do would be first to really try and understand the person, in the sense that, I mean, they're a good worker, but there will be those moments when you can tell they're not being themselves. So those pointers that tell you there's a problem is just trying to understand or speak to them and ask them, what is it, you know, just with a listening ear. Because if they trust you, then they can open up like, I'm really anxious that I don't want to go to my desk because I can't face people. Then the conversation is like, why do you feel like that, you know? Because your job involves facing people, you know? And so perhaps at this stage, as I said, if you're not already, you don't know what you're suffering from, maybe that would be a good time to say, can you go and have somebody speak to you and just assess what it is that is happening? Because, you know, your job involves A, B, C, D, and it really has to happen. But just listening, but in a way that you're not judging them, I think. And sometimes I hear a lot of people with mental health problems saying they just want somebody who they can lean on, not to be told, have you done this, have you done this, have you done this, because we are very good to prescribe, you know. And so for such a person, I don't go asking, have you tried this, have you tried this, have you tried this? It's about why are you afraid? And getting them to get to a place where they can get professional help that I may not be able to give them. And then sensitizing the people around them, because I mean, it's not, he's fearing people. I don't know what they would come and ask him. Maybe it's just even simple greetings, you know. He's just feeling like they're invading into my space. So how do you sensitize the people around them and tell them, you know, so and so needs to be treated differently, but still at the same time you don't want them to make him feel like he doesn't deserve being there. So it's really a balancing act, and then and of course the management as well, you know. You know, you just need to know that John, at some point he comes, he feels a little bit low, we need to give him space, because when he applies himself, he actually works. Then I would look at his workload. Maybe really there's also something that I know he said it wasn't about his work, but sometimes you can push work to people and we are expecting them to cope, because when we push, they are delivering. And so you push more and they are delivering, because there are people who are just like that. I mean, my job is to come here, it's a labor contract, I do this, I'm paid. And so whatever I'm asked to do, I will do. And then it ends up actually really stressing you. And so I would also worry about how much work am I throwing to this person? Can I regulate it? Can I have it assigned to someone else? And then I'll talk about just take a day off. I know we don't talk a lot about mental leave, you know. I think we need to have that even in our policies. Because even when somebody exhibits like they have a mental health problem, I mean, you're told to go home or take leave. Sometimes you're even told take leave. Your leave is for resting. It's not for when you are sick. But because, as you said, you don't have a broken limb, we can't really call it sick leave. So you're told, I mean, we can't call it leave. You're just told take leave, you know. But actually, I think there should be mental health leave. And, you know, it's not even a millennial problem. And sometimes people want to think, you know, because millennials will say, I can't just work. I want to go home. And sometimes they're just anxious, you know. And actually, they know what the issue is. They just want a day to go and relax and deal with their anxieties.
And Jackie, let me engage you on that, because unlike Cornell's situation where he had an existing problem, he knew what it was, and he knew that's why it was affecting his performance. What about if the workplace is causing that issue? It's a toxic environment, and you have to now navigate even co-workers who cause more stress. How do you begin to manage that situation?
When it's the workplace, it's a bit more complicated, because as we started, you mentioned it's the place that we spend more hours. We just go home to sleep. And then the next morning we are at it again. So when the toxic relationship or the toxic environment is the workplace, it's a bit complicated. And that is why I'll still go back to the management. If the management is sensitized and they can hear you out and they can help into engaging the workplace and making it better, is it the organization in the company that you're working in? Is it workload? Is it work politics? Because at times work politics can also be very challenging. Is it, at times it's also personal, because peer pressure is not just for the young ones. Peer pressure also happens in the workspace. So is it also self-imposed? Are you also not accepting yourself, who you are in the workplace, because of the people that you surround with the whole day? So there are so many aspects that individually you need to do, and also the organization can do to make the workplace better for you. Team building activities, having talks, inviting people to talk about mental health. That is also going to sensitize the workplace, sensitize other people in the employees in the organization, and with that, it's going to be easier for all of us, employees, management, and the other people to work well and also be mentally healthy. And
I'm really curious, because you find a lot of people who are caught, and I'll put this also to the audience, in between I need to make a living. I can't just leave this job because it's stressing me. And so they find themselves just staying and having to deal with this very hostile environment, which further exacerbates their condition. How would you advise someone, and any of you kind of made that decision to leave somewhere where it was just too much without maybe a safety net or a plan B? Has any one of you done that before? No. Let me come to my panel. I mean, Patrick, how would you just advise someone to be wise? Because, you need to make a living, you need to take care of yourself, but again, your mental health is also at stake.
I'll give a story of a friend of mine who was in a situation similar to what we are describing. And I think for him, he got a wake-up call from his spouse. Because the spouse told him, you are the only one we have. In the organization, should you fall and die today, they'll simply replace you and life goes on. So that woke him up. That really, I'm the only one they have. My family only has me. And so they helped him to realize that life can go on without you being in that organization, in the event that it gets to that far. However, sometimes it may not. Maybe it is managing yourself, which is the issue. Like when Jackie was talking, I was remembering some of the contributing issues that may be extended, maybe could even be coming from the family. I remember when we had very young babies in my family, in my house rather, and you are waking up in the morning to go to work, and that is when the domestic engineer or the one who helps says, okay, I'm also leaving. Now you have a small baby, you need to go to work, so that already is stressful. So you may not perform in your place of work. Right. Now, if the person you're working with or working for, or the person supervising your work does not go to understand what could be happening to you, they may only be judging you on the basis of what is happening at that place. So we find that mental health is quite wider than just a small context in the workplace where you are. And so, of course, if you have colleagues that are understanding, that would want to go beyond just you have to finish this is your deadline, these are the reports, these are what they want to find out. So how is family and all the other things, because that can also come in and interfere with the work that we are doing. And again, like we have been saying, when our leaders or the top management do not understand, then they may not appreciate what this person is actually struggling with. They are only interested in you delivering. But even the machines, I'm glad that if we refer to computers, they also hang. So this individual can also hang. Right. You know, they just can't function. And so what I would advise somebody is your health is very important. And you need yourself beyond your place of work, because you can deliver that work anywhere else.
Right.
Yes.
You know, I wonder, Mwikali, from now the management HR perspective, how do you do that practically in terms of taking it beyond the workplace? Because most employers will say, that's not in my purview. I only deal with what happens within these four walls. Whatever happens at home, you handle. So how do they do that practically to where you are really concerned about your employees outside of the workplace and you do give them the help they need outside?
I think one thing employers need to know is that a productive employee is one whose life is really well all around, you know. They won't come and be productive simply because you're giving them the right environment. What happens at home, what happens even as they meet with their friends is really important. And so employers need to start taking interest actually in the lives of their employees even outside, like just asking things like, how is the family, you know? And this is something Jackie said, we need to train supervisors and managers to really know what it means to care, to have emotional connection with their employees. When you ask me about how is your family, I feel like you care. You may not even know all my children, but one day you might even remember one and ask them by name. I really feel Jackie knows even my last born, you know. Right. And that is a connection that tells me my employer actually is concerned about me. But that is actually for the employer is doing it so that you know, you feel valued, you know. And also organizing trainings. I mean, there could be counselors who come and speak to people about their welfare. I remember one place where I worked, and we were really worried about the stress of our mothers. And we said, because, you know, when you have a young kid, you think about going back home. You're calling every now and then. And she said, you know what, how about bringing your house girls? We train them in first aid. We train them in just how to take care of a young kid, so that when you are seated at your desk, you know, my house girl actually knows how to give first aid, knows how to do this. We didn't have to do that, but actually we were concerned that if the mind, you're at work, but your mind is not there, your productivity will not be good. And at the end of the day, it ends up being expensive for everyone, for the employee, for the employer, right. Because you either go looking for other people to come and finish what has not been done by that person. So we have to worry about, and even, I mean, and just listening to what colleagues say, because also colleagues know people who do certain things like abuse substance because of work or stress related to work. So, you know, people who go and overdo it when they go to have a little right. drink. We all know the ones who pass in other different places. And listening to that feedback, because you can always hear comments, leave that one alone, you know. And you can also pass someone and smell something and you say, you take an interest in that person. I mean, what happened to you? Why are you coming to work like this? Is there a problem? Right, you know, right. Not saying whatever happens out there is not my problem, you know. So the employers really have to take care. And then having counseling services, you know, there are things that your employees will not tell you, however nice you think you are. You know, there are things that they can't open up to you about, but make it possible for them to open up to another person who can help them. Like having facilities where they can call for counseling, having facilities where they can call a life coach or whatever the titles are these days, but somebody who can listen to that which you can't deal with and just pay for it. Employees feel happy that my employer cares. Actually, I've got a line I can call a counselor on, and it is paid for, and I can talk for 1 whole hour and let my stress go, you know. So there are other things actually employers can do without totally being on your face, but just showing that they care.
And I'm sure people will be flocking that employer once they find out, oh, we have counseling services we can actually take advantage of. But I want to go to the last clip, just for my director to know, the last clip where Cornell actually shares the importance of safe spaces and the way to do that. So you're not coddling the employee who has the mental disorder, but you're kind of creating a very conducive environment where everyone can talk about their struggle. Take a look at this.
You can't start being that child of the boss where you only anyone like triggers you and you go tell to the boss. And so one of the gaps I would say I noticed, and I'm very keen and passionate about, is employers to create not just a safe space for the person with a mental health issue to come to them, but also to prepare the rest of the team to know that such things exist, as such situations arise, and you guys should be equipped to handle them.
All right, so actually reinforcing that point you made, Jackie, of conditioning and training everyone. And, you know, I'm sure for anyone who's going through a mental health disorder, you don't want to be that target.
Yeah.
You have that on your back. Oh, that's the one with the problem. So we also have to kind of walk on eggshells every time we come around them, because you are part of a team.
Yes.
And you're adding value to this company. That's why you're there. So how do you kind of find that balance to where, yes, you need special attention, but you're not a special person in terms of how you're treated?
Okay. I think the training should not be for special attention as such. It's for awareness, acceptance that he is part of us, he is going through a different challenge. And believe me, all of us go through challenges. Yeah. We all have different challenges, but mine could be mental health. Yours may not be mental health. So I should not be treated differently because my challenge was mental health. So awareness will help the other employees just realize that these conditions exist. This is one of us. And there are times that because of his condition, he may be reacting differently and he may need to be treated differently. So it's not for you to be special, but just how to relate to you so that the team is still intact. The team does not disintegrate wherever you are feeling low. The team understands that today you may come and you may not be getting out of the car.
Right.
And the team also understands when you're there, you have shown up and you show up. Right. The team understands when you take medication so that you don't have to hide when you're taking your medication. The team understands when you have your clinics, if you have to go for the clinics, and somebody else will sit in for you. So it's not for you to be special, but for you to function, for the team to function, and for everybody to function.
Right.
Yes.
And I think on the flip side of that, anyone who knows, okay, I'm just not a people person, but I love this aspect of the job, does that mean I completely shelve that whole idea of, you know, applying for that particular opportunity and going to something that is more conducive for my personality? Or what would you advise someone who's going through a disorder where there's certain things they just can't handle, as much as they'd love to be part of this organization and what they do?
Now, what I would say is there are two ways you can go about it. One, of course, if it's something you know, maybe from a personality perspective, it is something you can't handle, then given a chance, you'd take what you can handle because you have a chance to do that. But sometimes you don't have that chance. That is where now there is need for growth. There is need for you to stretch and grow, because we all can make adjustments and we can be able to grow and learn. So what I would say is take whichever path that works, so that if it's a situation that is what is available and there is nothing else you can do, then you learn and grow with it. But as I said earlier, you don't stress yourself and kill yourself and thinking you must. Because again, thinking of you must be the one to do it is a wrong perspective. So one can grow, so there is room for growth. There is room for one to learn and become something else. That is possible. Yeah. But if one can do something that they feel best to do, then they are more productive. So I would say you can go either way, but don't kill yourself just because you think you can be a super person. You cannot.
And I want to get from Corinne really quickly in terms of you making that very brave decision to leave. And people wondering what happens on the other side of that decision. Do you get into more depression because you have nothing to do, or is it extremely liberating because you finally left the place that was causing you stress? What happened?
To be honest, it is a double-edged sword, because half of you feels liberated. You're like, finally now I can breathe because I don't have to take in all these others. It releases one aspect of the stress, but then again now you don't have an income. And you're back to square one in your 20s. So there is now an overwhelming depression that comes again after, if you're not taking help. I was diagnosed with anxiety and depression. So I constantly, when I can't afford therapy, I use apps or places or artificial intelligence apps that are therapeutic. And that's how you cope with. For me, you can't just leave and stay like that, because you will get deeper into a depression. And that's just the fact, because the reality is we need to work, make money. So the moment you step out, however courageous it is, you should also be prepared for the consequences, and whether it needs you to get to therapy or get a support group, or find, if you at all cannot function in an 8 to 5, maybe your anxiety is in a really high place, then for me, okay, this is my thoughts about it, is finding a business or something that you can do with around people that don't need you to be constantly around, whether it's something that's online or something that doesn't need you to be constantly around too many people. But yeah, it is a double-edged sword. So you need to, the moment you make such a decision, make sure that you can back up your mental health with either therapy or medication if that's what you've been diagnosed with.
All right, great advice there. And I think I'll wrap up with Mwikali, just in terms of how do we change the whole perception and narrative of HR departments, which is often very negative, wherever you go. And I don't know why that is the case, but how do we begin to kind of shift that and change that for any HR manager watching, to be a bit more open? I mean, the case for Cornell or even Corinne are very rare. But how do we begin to see more and more of those popping up in different parts of the country?
I think first, I mean, we've seen a lot of stuff happen at workplace. We've seen people die or kill themselves. Yeah. We've seen people found dead in offices, you know, and not necessarily in Kenya, but we read about this in other places. So that tells you there's a problem. If you're a HR person, the first question you would be asking yourself is, why is this happening to my team? What is it that I need to do to really support the people who are there so that they can feel they don't need to get into that space where they're not being listened to, or they feel like they are alone. So I think we need really to work a lot on wellness programs at workplace. Worry about our employees' well-being, you know, providing structures that help them. You know, it's like when we talk a lot about, you know, physical health, and forget about mental health. And yet it is just a health that we also need to work on, like any other, you know, because you feel I'm getting anxious. That is something happening to my mind. Why am I getting anxious? Is it my workload? And so giving tips to employees and tell them, the moment you are working and you feel like this, stop or do this or go to this place or go relax. Sometimes the work environments are also so stressful. You could be doing a job where you're standing all the time. Your legs, you're tired, you know, or you have to think completely, concentrating on a screen, and you need time out just to think, you know. So we have to look for ways that can help people just feel that their welfare and their well-being at the workplace is really being taken care of, and avoid a lot of toxic environment, because that also brings other dilemmas into the workplace, you know. The guys who are saying this, the others who are saying, that one is a nutcase. I mean, statements like those just make you feel, I really don't belong here, you know, or every time you are late, oh, now what happened to this one? I mean, talking to people how they really need to care about each other, and not allowing or excusing silly comments that actually rub people the wrong way. Just being very firm. We can't have you here talking like this. This is a workplace. We need to treat people with respect, So I think there's a lot they can do. But if they don't do it, the workplace will really be a chaotic place, and many people will walk, because just like you did, you'll say, is it my health or is it my job? And you will walk and you'll survive, because out there you also have a mechanism that supports you. If a child I know came home, I'll take care of her. So you have parents, you have friends who know what you're going through, and so if your employer does not care to understand that and give you an environment that empowers you to deliver, then in that case you'd rather leave, and yet you make money for them. You see, that's the other thing. You're not sitting there just doing, you're working so hard. When you see the profits being declared, you're just there saying, oh my goodness, is this what we delivered? And you feel it can even give you a lot of stress. Just you start comparing, and how much do I earn? And I went to work when I was anxious. You go through all those things and you feel like no. But HR people have to look for budgets, because every time you want to do something, you're always being told there's no money. The budget is. Create that budget. That takes care of you, because that is your job, to be the one who creates a forum or an environment that empowers employees and enables them to do their job.
And this popped in my head as you were speaking, Mwikali, for you, Patrick, because when we talk about workplace, we automatically by default go to an office setting. But that can be anything. You have people on a construction site. You have someone who's pulling a mkokoteni. That's their workplace. They're also going through stress. They don't have an HR department to run to or structures. How would you advise them when they're dealing with their own mental health stress to be able to, maybe draw up their own life policy, if you will, to handle that?
Actually, I was thinking about the same when my colleague was talking, because what you'll find in a working situation, whether employed or self-employed, it's a working situation. When we cannot determine our limits, how much we can do, and that goes back to what Jackie was saying, accepting this is the much I can do. Now that is good enough. If individuals can define, this is the much I can do, this is the much I will be able to make, and I can be able to live within this now as I continue to grow and move somewhere else. Because the peer pressure she was talking about, it's actually a big issue, because somebody feels, oh, by this age you should be able to do this, my age mates, my colleagues, and they are doing this, I'm not able to do this. So they push themselves beyond what their actual natural limits can manage. So individuals should be able to know what are your limits, accept that is your limit, and if you can grow yourself beyond that, then grow gradually, so that it's not something so sudden that overstretches an individual, because there are many unpredictable situations that arise. Now, also, as much as we talk about flexibility, predictability gives peace. When we're able to know this is what you're going to do, and this is how much I'm able to do. Now, that is very helpful. But if there are too many unpredictable things, that is very stressful, because you don't know what to expect any given time. Now that can be very stressful. So if people don't plan their work well, so that they can be able to tell this when I should do this is how I should do this, and this skill I don't have, then I acquired this skill to help me do this, so that you have appropriate skills to handle appropriate things that you need to do. So that, for me, I think, even for people who are self-employed, in fact, they're even more exposed to stress than those who are employed, because you can ask for a time off from your employer. But if you are you're self-employed, who do you ask time off from? Challenge.
Oftentimes working 10 times harder than those who are employed. Absolutely. Thank you so much to Patrick, to Mwikali, Jackie, and Corinne, and of course our extended panel as well, for sharing your experience. And knowing your limits and listening to your body, so you don't overextend yourself. You only have one body in this life. Thank you so much for watching. Keep the conversation going on social media, #CitizenWeekend. I'll see you again next week. Good night.